I was like in tears. I said, Mother, is Dad really going to die?
We met in high school. He was a junior and I was a freshman. He was 2 years ahead of me. That was back in the early 40s.
You know, NASA was family. Everybody that lived around us was all family. You see the smoke, the crackling noise that comes 3 seconds later, and the ground shakes, and then the heat wave. That's amazing.
Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here.
I had just arrived home and the phone rang. It was a friend of ours, Jerry Hammack. The first thing he said to me was, this country, that country, they all have offered for the spacecraft to land. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, hasn't anyone told you? And I said, what?
Hi, listen, Ken, I'm naturally concerned. How have things looked this morning? My kids aren't up yet, and I was wondering what I could tell them. Well, I've been up all night. I haven't been able to sleep. It's been a nightmare. Jim gone to bed yet at all, do you know?
No,
Is he still up?
Fred's sacked out right now, and we're going to have a change in command here in a little bit, and Jim and Jack are going to sack out, and Fred will lie in the store for a while.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes me feel better. I think he'll get some rest.
The very next day, my mom sent me to school. A boy came up to me out in the hall, and he said, I am so sorry that your father's going to die. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, you know, it's all over the news. So, and of course, I was upset. I cried, and somebody came to pick me up that day. Father Raish was sitting on the coffee table, and around the coffee table were all my mother's friends and all these astronaut wives. They were all praying, and it was at that point that I was like, oh my gosh, he really is going to die.
So how do you feel about making a 16 foot per second burn in 37 minutes?
Well, we'll give it a try, Jack, if that's all we got.
I was very upset. No one was paying attention to what was going on until the accident occurred, and immediately they pounced on us.
Even as a young age, you know, you recognize that there's something not right, and you know, you start to realize you really want your dad back.
I was surrounded by my children. In fact, I remember holding Jeff, the little guy. I held him so tight that he screamed.
We were waiting and we were waiting and we were waiting, and I could remember how afraid, you know, I was that something was wrong.
Everyone was screaming. It was fantastic. Probably the biggest relief I've ever had in my life. I think that he and I sort of thought of each other during all this time.
When we got back to our neighborhood with my dad, you know, when he finally got back to our hometown, that point was probably when I was the most relieved. We were actually home and Dad was there with us.
In everything, you have to have a positive attitude. I think when I look back on my life, I can leave it with a sense of achievement.